Hey guys, welcome back to another video. We are back from Usdgc. It was a little hectic out there, so I wasn't able to film the round 3 recap for Manny out there, but we're back at home now and I can finally do it. For those of you that don't know me or don't know this series, my name is Chris. I am co-owner of Disc Zone, which is a disc golf store located in Santa Cruz, California. And I had the opportunity of caddying for Manny, which is a player I sponsor out at Usdgc in Rock Hill, South Carolina. I've published 2 videos for that, round 1 and round 2, and my Monday qualifier actually, so 3 videos. And at this point, after round 2, Manny shot an even round, which put him, I believe, around 73rd, and he needed to be 45th in order to make the cut for finals day. And for this round recap, I'm going to be doing it so we don't give away any spoilers. And hopefully we could see him make finals day at the conclusion of this video. But let's get straight into it. So getting into hole 1 is the downhill 289 feet. It was crazy right to left wind, maybe upwards of 30 to 35 mile per hour gusts. He was thinking of going between proxy or soft envy backhand or A2 forehand. And in the end, he decided to go A2. And funny enough, he released it pretty low. And I thought he was going to hit the rocks right in between the double mandos, but it barely lifted over and gave himself a 77-footer. Funny enough, I didn't record this putt, but it was a crazy right to left wind putt, maybe like 25 miles per hour. Walking up to the putt, I was telling him, like, you should probably run this because if you go a little long, you'll make the comebacker. And he said he'll feel it out once he gets to the lie. I would say out of his hand, it looked great. It drifted slightly to the right and faded perfectly dead center for birdie. First time birdieing that hole all week, so pretty stoked on that. 1 down. Moving into hole 2, uphill 409-foot hole. He decided to switch his play up round 2, and he stuck with it. Instead of throwing DD2, he threw Thunderbird. He threw it a little bit higher than the day prior, where he threw it kind of into the ground, regressed up. He threw it higher, but the left to right wind on his hyzer throw just slammed it kind of down once it flipped. And so it hit the ground maybe like 200 feet up the fairway and gave him like a chip 130-foot sidearm, which he parked and then took a par. And walking into hole 3, which is, I believe, one of the hardest holes on the course, tons of OB islands scattered across the fairway. And Manny was talking to me on the walk over saying, should I go for it? And what we mean by that is, originally on the first 2 days, he was doing a layup play where you just go hyzer over a little gap and kind of lay up short of some of those OB islands. I told him on that walk over that you should probably just stick to your game plan so you don't get flustered. If you make a mistake and you're in like a spot that you're usually not in. That may have been a mistake because off the tee, he threw his most overstable MF Doom Destroyer, threw it a little inside, and the left to right wind that's normally there, it's kind of like left to right headwind, didn't really drop it as much as he thought, and he ended up OB by like a couple feet. But he was about 400-ish feet away from saving his par. And on top of that, you have to get your 420-foot shot through this double mando gap and skip left pretty heavily at the end in order to get a putt. He decided to go Koi Destroyer, and he hyzer flipped it straight, and it got actually a really nice skip. He was a little afraid of it going long, but ended up staying in bounds. And he put himself about maybe 50, 55 feet for his par. Crazy right to left wind. And he putted it, and out of his hand it looked great, but it lifted just a little bit, hit the top of the band, and almost skipped down the hill, but luckily hit the tree by the basket, had a tap-in bogey. So that brings him back to even. Hole 4, which is the hole that Manny aced in practice on the FPO basket. He decided to stick with his game plan, his tie-dye champion TL3, throw it on a little bit of hyzer, flipped up perfectly, went straight through the gap pretty fast, and he actually almost aced it. It was just a little right of the basket. He ended up skipping to edge of circle long, maybe like 30-ish feet. And he was pinned up against a tree, so it was kind of like an awkward lie with his right foot being on a root. It was a tailwind putt, and I told him just try to commit to the best you can. And he put it just at the band, and with his nose down putt, it typically wants to drop pretty aggressively already. And so it dropped, hit the cage, and had a tap in for par. So that was the first birdie miss of the round. Going on to hole 5, similar game plan. Since it was just raging wind, he decided to stable up. Instead of throwing DD2 on a sidearm, he threw his Quarry Destroyer on a sidearm. Threw it out there maybe like 350, 360 feet, and he was right near the road. And funny enough, I didn't get this video either, but there was people maybe like 40 feet, 30 feet in front of him, like watching along the road. And he decided to go huge Spy Kaiser with his MF Doom Destroyer to put himself in the right position, threw it wide, and ended up maybe like 400 feet from the pin. And he was talking to me about what he should throw. I ranged it for him. It was like 410 feet. And he decided to go with the Star Firebird. And the goal was to miss somewhere to the right, because on the left side, there's a ton of water and you could easily lose a disc, go OB, and not even cross. And you have to rethrow, which would suck. But he decided to go Star Firebird. Heiser flipped it, and on camera I was telling it to flip because it looked like it was going to fade out, but it did flip, and it kind of gave me a sense of relief, like, oh, it's good. But then it kind of got a lift from the right to left wind and landed inbounds and then barely skipped out. It gave himself like a tap in par from like 13 feet. No harm, no foul there, really. But it would have been a nice birdie to get, but can't complain. Moving into hole 6, he's been throwing that same Star Firebird on that hole. It's like 378-ish feet or something like that. And he threw it again pretty well. Heiser flipped straight, and it didn't get the fade he necessarily was anticipating, but it skipped into the circle about 28 feet. It was pretty funny. The other guys that he was playing with, 2 of the 3 guys he was playing with, it was Jake Hebenheimer and Jacob Curtis, ended up in like the same spot just left of him. So it was kind of like perfectly, they're all at 28 feet, so they went down the line. Cupcake ended up making his, Hebenheimer made his, and Manny stepped up to his downhill 28-footer into the sand pit, tailwind. Very similar putt to hole 4. Took his time, but ended up missing short right and hit the cage and just had a tap in par. So that was his second birdie putt missed in the round, but he's still even through the round through 6 holes, which is by no means a bad score. A lot of people are over par through that stretch, so can't complain. Going into hole 7, it was pretty interesting wind. It was kind of windy, and there was a ton of people watching the card. We also had Jeremy Colling on the card, so a lot of people were walking with us. I think Cupcake ended up going before him, and he threw Luna, and he Heiser flipped it and burned it over right of the Mando. And so that kind of gave Manny an idea of what the wind was like. He ended up throwing his Neutron Proxy, and he threw it on a good amount of Heiser. It flipped up, but just didn't get the turn he was expecting. It kind of flipped and kind of just slowly drifted left. Ended up hitting the triple Mando. He was safe with like a 38-foot run, straddle run. He gave a pretty good bid, and it looked like it was going to go in, but it kind of just drifted right in front of the chains. And luckily, only put himself at like 18 feet, didn't go OB or anything, but tap in par there. Hole 8, he was sticking to the same game plan. The wind actually wasn't really as apparent as it was on the previous hole, even though the holes are right next to each other, which was pretty funny. He threw Hex down the middle. I told him just to throw it a little bit harder than the day before so he could progress a little farther, make his upshot a little bit easier. And he did so pretty perfectly. Heiser flipped straight, pushed straight, landed maybe 360 feet from the basket. It's a very tight forehand or roller, and he decided to go DD2 sidearm. Went a little inside, but it flipped up pretty nice. And we didn't know what he had. There was no spotter, so we couldn't tell where he landed, but he ended up landing around 40-ish feet for his 4th or 5th birdie putt. I think his 5th birdie putt of the round. It was a ton of headwinds coming from the basket to him, and he said it kind of like stuck to his fingers and kept the disc a little straight, and it was basically a good layup, tap and par for hole 8. So still even through 8 holes. Hole 9 is basically a huge Heiser force carry. That's like 385-ish feet. He ended up going Halo Champ Destroyer. He put it on a lot of Heiser because of the headwind. That was pretty apparent on that hole. And it looked like it was gonna end up short, and I was a little scared. But ended up landing safely in bounds about 38-ish feet for his 6th birdie putt of the round. It was like a similar tailwind putt to the putts on hole 4 and hole 6. And I told him just like be confident, just know it's a tailwind. And he ended up putting it up well above the basket and it looked perfect. And it dropped and it hit barely below or in the middle of the band and just dropped straight down for his par. He thought that one was going in, so it was a little bit of a heartbreaker, but luckily it wasn't a bogey, so still even through 9 holes. And it's important to note to make the cut. I was talking with Ethan, who also caddied for Manny for round 2. We were thinking that it probably would need anywhere between like 4 to 7 down in order to make the cut for finals day, probably closer to 7 down. So starting out even through 9, although it wasn't ideal, it wasn't necessarily bad, but just keep that in mind for this back 9. Heading into hole 10, it's an eagleable 540-foot hole. I think it's 470 feet to the pin though. Manny wasn't really feeling it with the headwind. It was kind of pretty strong. So he ended up going hex layup play, did so perfectly, landed 240 feet from the pin, which is a lot closer than his previous 2 days. And I told him, just go A2, go on a hyzer, just throw it hard. You won't go long. And he did so perfectly. Landed kind of right at the basket and rolled a little bit, but put himself about 15 feet for the birdie. And he ended up cashing that in, even though the putt was a little windy. Heading into hole 11, similar to hole 3, one of the harder holes on the course with snaking hazard throughout the fairway. You have to land in very specific landing zones. He ended up sticking with his Thunderbird game plan. He threw his Thunderbird, hyzer flip straight, drifted a little right and faded at the end about 410 feet into headwind. Pretty much a smash for that type of shot. He was in a very similar spot the day before and ended up going maybe like 35 feet long. And I told him, just put it a little wider with the same disc and a little bit more hyzer, and hopefully you just crash in closer to the basket. He threw his Koi Halo Star Destroyer and did so perfectly out of the hand. I loved it. And it landed him above the basket about 15 feet with crazy headwind. And it was funny. He was lining up the putt for a while. He ended up throwing it. It looked like below the basket and it felt like it was below the cage. And the headwind just lifted it up and kept it straight and barely inched over the rim. If there was no headwind, that was for sure hitting the cage, but still a great putt. So back-to-back birdies. He's 2 down through the back 9, and he's heading into hole 12, which is another one of the hardest holes on the course. He's up first, and we were talking about whether or not he should lay up, because in order to go for birdie, you need to go throw maybe 450 feet to a landing zone or 450 feet of power just because of the headwind that was coming off the tee pad. He decided to do a layup play and wanted to go with his most overstable destroyer, which is an MF Doom destroyer. Throw it out wide, short of the OB, and kind of like chip up to the green. But when he threw it a little bit of hyzer and it flipped up, and he just juiced it a little bit harder than anticipated and landed right in the middle of the OB. And luckily you progress to the drop zone, but that is one of the moments in the round where I figured I probably should have told him he should just go to Firebird off the tee, just lay up, make sure you never even contend with the OB, just so you're safe on the first shot, but it is what it is. His next shot, he luckily progressed to the drop zone, which is 360 feet away, and he was there on round 2, so it was very familiar territory, and he got to see other guys throw before he did. You can kind of see what the wind was doing to the disc. He threw his MF Doom Destroyer perfectly to about bullseye's edge, tapped in for his par. Very good save there. Heading into hole 13, which is probably Manny's kryptonite hole, and he says that's his kryptonite hole because the tee shot is a very demanding flex shot where if you don't flex it to the right into the open fairway, you will land in the tree line and have no shot at the basket. And funny enough, I think Jeremy Colling threw a dimension or something right before him, and it faded out instantly left into the tree line. I was thinking, I just told Manny before, just throw your MF Doom Destroyer, most overstable, and just throw it to the right. And if you miss right, you miss right. And I was filming the video, and I heard him say, "Oh my God," off the tee. I kind of just like looked at the angle of the disc, and I just knew it wasn't turning at all. He ended up flexing or fading straight into the woods, even deeper than Jeremy Colling. And I was like, oh man, this could be bogey territory. And we go up to his lie in the woods, and he basically has nothing. It's like a very steep sidearm over trees through this tiny gap. He took his deflector and his really overstable Firebird, kind of like lined it up. And I think he ended up throwing his Firebird super high. And I thought he made it back into the fairway, but it clipped the top of a tree and dropped him at the edge of the fairway with no shot at the green. He ended up pitching out with his proxy and was maybe like 230-ish feet away from the basket. He decided to go sidearm A2, landed himself like 25 feet. We thought he might have gone OB, but he luckily stayed in bounds, made the putt for bogey, and puts himself back at 1 down. So now we're moving into hole 14, and it's basically birdie out. In my mind, you can maybe get 4 of the next 5 holes and still have a chance at making it, but it would be pretty tough. But at hole 14, we were talking about it. It's kind of like tailwind right to left. And on the previous day, he ended up throwing his hex pretty well. Slide hyzer flipped up and just landed kind of edge of circle. And I told him, just do the same thing. Just commit a little harder and try to get yourself within the circle. And out of his hand, it looked perfect. Looked like he threw his hex on a good amount of hyzer. It flipped. And then about 250 feet out of his hand, it started drifting to the right a little bit. And we were very surprised. It must have just been the right to left wind, kind of like turning the disc a little bit. Ended up landing around 66 feet. It's kind of a death putt based on where he landed. If you go past the basket at all, you will most likely go into the hazard, which is no bueno. So I told him to try to give it a soft bid. And the wind was swirling. It was kind of like headwind, tailwind, left to right. And he ended up putting his bid up at like mid-level, and it just got smashed down Big immediately. Drop. And it was basically a good layup for par. Heading into hole 15, triple mando hole, where you kind of just smash your shot through the triple mando and you have a pretty easy upshot. He decided to go with his one of his Halo Star Destroyers, an older run. And he threw it on hyzer, and it flipped up and just drifted slowly right of the triple mando. Ended up missing mando, put him at the drop zone. And it was kind of a very tough up and down from there. You have to go through a little gap like 280, 300 feet away. He ended up clipping a rock, and then he upshot. He tried to throw it in for par with his link, but it ended up missing the gap, kicked right, and put himself with a tricky bogey putt. And it was like 25-ish feet with weird footing. And he ended up barely making that in, which was pretty solid for his bogey save. So he's back to even. Hole 16, he threw his hex instead of disking up to like a TL3 Thunderbird to try to just make sure to stay in the fairway instead of drifting out into the hazard. And he threw it on hyzer, and I thought it was perfect. It flipped, and then once again, 250, probably like 300 feet down the fairway, it drifted right, and it hit the tree and dropped down. Gave himself like a 65-footer for birdie, weird footing, and he put up the putt. And I honestly thought it might have gone in, but there was a little bit of tailwind, and it dropped right into the cage, tap in par. And at this point, Manny's like, I might as well just go for ace on 17. So he's talking to me about what disc to throw. There's a ton of headwind, and I was like, should just throw a deflector out wide and just commit flat and try to ring it up.
Yeah, Manny.
And out of his hand, it looked perfect. I actually thought he threw it in. I'm sorry for the poor angle, but there was a tree blocking the basket perfectly, and I didn't want to like get in anyone's way. So I think it went just behind the basket and landed him around 28 feet with a pretty sketchy right to left headwind kind of putt, or right to left wind in general putt. And he ended up putting it perfect height, and it drifted a little left, perfectly dead center for birdie. So 1 down. And 18, Manny told me he just wanted to play for par, or if he had a good shot off the tee with his hex where it put himself in a maybe good position to go for birdie, he would. He ended up throwing a little low, and it was a flex shot, and based on the flex shot from 13, he didn't really want to go for it. And in the previous 2 rounds, he ended up taking double bogey both times, so he decided just to lay up, jump putt to around 18 feet, maybe like 17-ish feet, and made his putt for par. And so he ended up finishing 1 down. He moved up somewhere like 10-ish spots to around 64th, 63rd. But yeah, that ended up finishing his tournament at Usdgc. just shy of the cut, 4 or 5 strokes. Let's cut to Manny and I's thoughts at the end of the round and see how he did.
All right, so that was it for my USDGC experience, round 3. Shot a 1 down this time. Way better round. Game of inches. That's all I can say. Pretty lucky breaks on some putts. Putt felt pretty confident all throughout the weekend. But starting from day 1 to day 3 today, I think I improved a lot and really kind of found myself throwing the shots I needed to, making less mistakes. Some holes could definitely need some improvement. What I can take from this is be better at flex shots, be mindful of the green and my up shots. I mean, what about you, Chris? Turn the camera around.
Yeah, I think you played pretty good, pretty exceptional in my opinion. Yeah, like you said, it was just a game of inches. A couple putts low, maybe more, actually a handful of putts kind of low. Couple maybe slightly bad breaks, but I feel like Manny for sure has the skills to be able to compete out here and make the cut. And you could say what could have been, but I think it was a strong improvement, and that's what really matters. And yeah, that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, it was a great experience. Shout out to Chris, shout out to Ethan for coming and watching for me and also carrying my bag. It was very helpful. Yeah, this was sick. Playing a tournament outside of the state of California is definitely fun. And I would like to do that more in the near future and go and travel to some other like West Coast tournaments up north in the PNW. So yeah, thank you so much for watching.
And so that kind of does it for the video. Like we said, it was a game of inches out there. Maybe if he made a few more putts here and there or made all of his putts, he might have made the cut for sure, but who knows? Overall, I was really impressed with how Manny played. I think he's capable of playing at Pro Tour events, and as long as he displays confidence while he's out there, I think he has a chance at doing really well. We're looking forward to next year and looking forward overall to the next Pro Tour event. Hopefully Manny can showcase a little bit more of his skills there as well. But that kind of does it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this USDGC content. If you want to support us, you could follow Manny on Instagram. You could check out my store at www.discon.com. I got a bunch of discs on there, pre-owned discs, new discs, collectibles. It'd really mean a lot if you check it out. If you want to comment down something below nice to Manny, congratulate him for competing. That would be awesome. Thank you guys, though, again for watching. Thank you again for all your support, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.